Alright, so today we have the HD1 from Rotor Riot. It is their 5-inch frame designed for digital flight, whether it be with the DJI Air unit or with the Caddx Vista or the Caddx Nebula Pro, whatever you choose. Basically, it's a digital FPV 5-inch freestyle quad. So we're going to be building that today. Of course, I'm going to be using the DJI Air unit. Shout out again to DJI for getting me out that Air unit. I know it's kind of not discontinued or whatever is going on with it. It is in limbo. I believe Caddx is going to be continuing on the DJI HD systems. But DJI had a few of these laying around still, so I was able to get my hands on a few of them. So thank you again, DJI. Other than that, we have the quad itself. It's in pieces down here. You can kind of see it here. Forearms, the X-brace, bottom plate, top plate. As for the stack that we're going to be using the Diatone F405 DJI. And it's a nice stack. It plugs directly right on into the Air unit. The only thing, I've already kind of done a test mock-up. The only thing I've done was I made a little bit longer cord so that way I can flip my ESC and my flight controller just for wiring purposes, stuff like that. You don't have to do it, but in this video we're going to do it that way. I've seen a couple other videos on YouTube where they went through the side or they went through the back. I came to the conclusion, and there is a video out there that they kind of did the same thing I did, which I'm assuming they either used longer wires or however they did it. But I'm going to go ahead and build it this way, and it just made more sense for me. But that's pretty much everything that this thing's going to... Oh, the motors. Jesus. Getting way ahead of it. We went with the Hype Train from Rotor Riot. These are 2306, 2450 kVs. It is a 4-cell build. Yeah. We're going to be using some Umagod grips. As we get into the build, you're going to see all the stuff we're going to be using, and I'll kind of be as detailed as I can. This, by the way, this is my first FPV quad build. Not my first build in general. I'm pretty capable of building a lot of things, but this is my first FPV quad build. I think I went the easy route with the DJI, a little less soldering, stuff like that. But I think it'll be a pretty nice beginner build frame, and more importantly, pretty fun to fly. And I want to stress, like, the people, yes, I know bind and fly is super legit, that you just get your quad, hook it up to a radio, and fly it out. Super nice if you have the extra money and you don't have any intention on ever building a quad, or you know, if you have a repair facility near you that can repair it or whatnot. But I highly always recommend to build your own, and maybe like your first one or two, build your own, so that way you get comfortable with knowing how everything works. So if something goes on with the flight, or something goes on where it's not powering on, you kind of go back through your build steps and understand what you were doing. But enough of me talking. We're going to get right into the building, and we can talk as we build. So the first thing that we have here is the frame. Obviously they use a sandwich style. I've kind of already mocked a lot of this stuff up. You want to make sure your press nuts are facing on the upside, because you're going to be sandwiching the arms from the bottom side. And if you have those press nuts, it's not going to work. Use Loctite. Anything metal to metal, always use Loctite. It keeps keeps that locked in nice and neat so that way you don't have anything coming loose in the middle of your flight. And the arms are designed, these humps are designed to go forward and back. I'm just going to go ahead and put this one up through there. Oh. Already forgetting stuff. And you're going to see which ones go where aligned with these holes. So obviously you want to put it like so. First one's going to be a little squirrely just because you got everything dangling here. And don't crank them down yet because you're going to have to align all of these little guys in there. You don't need a ton of Loctite either, so don't cake that on. You just need enough to fit in the threads. That's about it. I was hoping my my battery charger would be here in time for this build. I have a pretty nice driver. Electric driver that helps build these things faster, but my dumbass, I left my charger at my previous employer, and of course they lost it or they can't find it or something like that. Who knows? I don't know. Either way, we'll just get a new one and get a nice our next build we'll have the electric driver. I start with just putting all the arms in at least, and then we can just always put all the other screws in. I just found it easier to do it this way, just so the arms are all at least aligned in there. Sorry if it goes off camera for a second. I'm doing this awkwardly. I'm making sure staying here for you guys to see, but at the same time making sure putting things in the right spot. This is why you leave it a little bit loose, all these, so that way you can kind of shift them all around, just in case it's not aligned perfectly. We'll finish up these little guys right there. As you can see, we have the 8 screws on the bottom there now, and we can go ahead and crank them down. They don't need to be loose anymore. And you don't want to like be a superhero and try to break through the carbon or anything like that. Just tighten them down. Remember, you got that Loctite on there, so they're gonna hold. You're just gonna want to make sure that it's nice and flat. That means you have it installed correctly, basically. Your ESC posts are going to slide through these holes, and it does come with the 20 millimeter or the 30 millimeter, so that way you can run both ESCs or both stacks, which that's what we're going to get into next. I'm going to start putting the stack on. The Diatone Mamba stack is a 30 millimeter stack. They give you, in the pack, they give you some of these rubber grommets. So it's nice to have those to adjust where you're gonna put the ESC. Alright, so I just start with putting the grommets on there, putting the bolts to the bottom, and leaving it there. That way we can determine how high we need once we put our stack on. And like I said, typically the way they want you to install without having to alter any software is they want to run like so through the back. But what we're going to do is we are going to flip it and run it that way. So the battery lead will come right out the front, and I can actually tie it off to this standoff right here. It does require having to run this longer wire to go from here to the top of the ESC, but that's why I went ahead and did that. Alright, so if your ESC doesn't already come with the gummies, you're going to want to figure out the right size gummy that you're going to use and go ahead and insert them into the ESC. What I like to do is I just pinch it, put the edge up through the hole, and then kind of spin it as I'm pushing that lip up through, and then it just kind of goes right in. A lot of people struggle with these. It's not too difficult if you just follow a method that works. And again, you just pinch it, put it up through there, just give it a nice little spin. That one didn't go, so we got to kind of push it a little bit. If it doesn't go, you just kind of push it in. She's good to go. Always dry fit your whole install before you start soldering things up. Like obviously that's a little too high. I don't like that right there, so we're gonna bring that down a little bit. Maybe get rid of these O-rings here. Alright, so after you have those gummies on and you have it all mocked up here, we're going to go ahead and put our motors on here. I'm going to run the skids, so basically what we're going to do is we're going to put the screws down through here, screw them into the motor. These allow us to, have a landing surface or, to do skid tricks or whatever. And the same thing applies here. We're going to be putting it on metal, so just a little bit of thread lock. And if it isn't self-explanatory already, you want these wires facing the arms. And when you're putting the screws in, make sure they're not hitting any of the magnet coils in there. I know some of them kind of get a little bit close, so just be really mindful of where those screws are. In these cases, these are these ones aren't even coming close, so they're not even protruding through. The screws that are supplied by Rotor Riot, they might be different than these screws here. These were my own screws that I had around, so they may be different colors or whatnot. So don't trip out if you see this and it's like, oh, those aren't the same screws. Same size. I just had some shiny ones, and I don't know. I know I just fly it, but I like to look at it sometimes too. And same thing, you just want to tighten them down. You have the Loctite on there, so they're not gonna go anywhere. Hopefully not. Obviously, after first couple flights, you want to check that, make sure. When you're tightening squares, you always want to use cross pattern. If you don't know that already, just start doing that. It helps, I guess, torque it down. I don't know why, but I just do it, and everybody's told me to do it that way. So I don't have an answer for you, but just do it that way. Okay, so we are going to put our motor wires on now. It doesn't matter the orientation that you solder them on to the pads, because you change it all in the software. But for this one, I'm basically just gonna go right across the arm, tape it down, and then run the wires right there. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. I just like to get this on there nice and clean. Again, I know it doesn't matter, but I don't know, I'm just kind of a stickler for clean builds. I don't know. Just the way I do things. Call it OCD or whatever it may be. Something like that. Nice and clean. When you cut them, just give yourself a little bit of play, just so you have it. We're gonna get our iron turned on, and I am using a 60/40. Going to be using some flux, and I'm going to solder these at like 400, I believe. I know it's hot for this application, but it'll be real quick. Nice shiny puddles. And let's get these tinned up. It's kind of awkward doing this from this angle, but I want to make sure I get this video for you guys. The flux just helps you bond things together a little bit. I find it a lot easier just using flux. And you just want to see it puddle up. And just watch your connections. Make sure they're staying on the pads, just like that. You want to see nice, shiny, round puddles, basically. Like that, to where it's nice and puddled up, nice, shiny, round. That's what you want to see. We have all the motor wires all soldered up. And again, I just want to see the nice beads on them. Make sure it's all together. Use a good solder, use some good flux, and it should be pretty easy. Alright, so we are going to put our battery tender on here now. And we're doing it a little bit different than what is recommended, but I think it's going to be better. We're going to be coming off the front here, because there's a standoff right here. So we're going to be coming off here and coming out this way. I do have to figure out how long I'm going to cut it. If you haven't ever done XT60s before, basically you take the wire and you put it down inside there. But what I do is I take the solder, bend it in two, and twist it, put it down in there, heat it up, and put my wire in. Definitely turn my iron up. Gotta get maximum heat on this one. I mean, not crazy heat, but enough to melt that solder down in there. There we go. That's a good connection there. Alright. The second one here. I'm going all black. I wouldn't recommend doing all black if you haven't done these before, just because you could get the polarities mixed up. That's just my advice. And just like that, we have our end. Like I said, I went with the all black look. It's just aesthetics, honestly. If you haven't soldered or not comfortable soldering, I would use black and red, just so you know what polarity you're going for. Just heads up. Alright, next up is putting the cap on, a resistor, whatever you want to call them. Gray side, negative side. We're going to run it like that, basically. Yep. Let's do it. Turn that iron all the way up. These are big pads, so it's going to need a little bit more heat. But we're going to tin these up and then put these on first, because then as we're putting the wires on, the solder just holds. Took a little bit. These pads are pretty big, so we had to make sure we put enough solder and made sure our resistor or capacitor, everything was all nice and soldered on. And again, you just make sure it flows and it's nice and shiny. That's the most important part of it. But you know, our pigtail's on there. This is kind of how I wanted it to go, so it can zip tie onto the post over here and plug into the battery. That's the goal. But we're going to continue on with this one. Next, we're going to be mounting the DJI system, and that one's going to be pretty straightforward because we're just going to literally run it like so. But we have to put some of the mounts on, do some of that stuff, as well as run this wire from down here all the way through to the top stack. Alright, so now that we have our battery lead soldered on, our cap soldered on, everything's soldered on, it's time to put the flight controller on. And this is where this longer wire that I was talking about, that I made so I can run it underneath here to the flight controller. Flipping this around, the one it comes with is too short, so I had to make a little bit longer one to accommodate doing how I wanted to do the install. So we're gonna go ahead and plug this guy in. You wanna make sure that's clipped all the way in. These are meant to go in only one way because they have little channels on the side. But before we lay this down, we're gonna take our DJI air unit, and there's an arrow on the back of the camera. This needs to be facing up. You can flip it in the software, but we're gonna go ahead and put it facing up for now. But we're gonna run that through there as well. And I know we have to run our flight unit up a little bit, but that's it for now. And what we're gonna do now is put the post on so we can install our antennas. I'm just gonna hand tighten these down for right now. And then for the antennas, you just want to make sure that both of these ends are facing. So when it sits in there, you want them facing the air unit when you put both these antennas in before you press them down. And they just snap in. Put these little sleeves over the frame posts, so that way the 3D printed part can sit right there on top. I know everybody says it on all their videos. This definitely couldn't be easier, because literally this is all we need for our DJI unit. It just plugs right in. Super, super easy. This is primarily the reason why I figured, you know, this would be a good first build, just because it's on the easier side doing a digital setup. But and obviously because I'm already in the DJI ecosystem, so to speak, with my DJI FPV and having the goggles already, this kind of makes sense. I'm going to tape this down. I just don't want to block the SD card slot. Now we're going to put our back post back on. Yep, I think that might have been the route to go, because our antennas are definitely still plugged in, and I'm not going to run a ton of angle just because it's still fairly new and I'm learning. They say 20 and below is a good spot to learn on. They said it in one of the videos. I don't know how true it is, but I'm going to go with it because they probably have been flying longer than me. Cool. Camera's mounted, and we're not going to put the top plate on officially yet. I'm just going to mock it up because we still have to do all of our programming, stuff like that. So the screws that came with the stack worked out great. They're just nylon nuts going on here. Make sure we're not pinching any wires or anything like that. Beautiful. I think I'm going to order some nylon locking nuts, just because, I mean, I think these will be fine, but I have them kind of squished a little bit and I don't like it. Alright, so we have it all ready to go in just for our power-up test. I don't have a smokestack, so probably not the best idea for a beginner to not have a smokestack, but we're just going to send it. That's good. We have all blinking lights. Everything's good. Well, let's go ahead and put the top plate on, and then we're gonna head over and do some of the software stuff. Oh, I failed to mention that this was the USA edition. So if you're looking at photos online and stuff like that, they actually inlay the Rotor Riot logo in the carbon fiber on the USA edition. I think the press nuts are a little bit different. I believe the carbon's a little bit different as well, but I'm not 100% sure on that one. We have some nice UMA grip to go on as well. I forgot to put on GoPro mount that I printed out. There we go. Alright everybody, so there we have it. We successfully got through the build, the hardware part of it now, let's head on over to the computer and get this thing all dialed in. We're going to have to change a few things on the ESC and get the DJI controller and goggles, everything talking to each other. So let's head on over to the computer. Okay, so now we are going to go into Betaflight and make sure everything is working with the drone, everything's talking and setting up our PIDs, all that stuff. So we're gonna head on over to Betaflight and kind of walk through that. Okay, so we are in Betaflight, and all you're gonna do is when you plug in your mini USB, you're gonna hit the little connect button. Up here, before you connect, it will have a little port tab. Just make sure it says USB and then hit connect, and then just verify that your quad is actually reacting to the correct position. Everything looks good there. You want to make sure your ports tabs are correct already. Since I used the Mamba stack from Diatone and it uses a direct cable, basically it's already going to have the ports and everything selected for you. So just double check. Your UART1 needs to be your serial RX, which basically is your S-Bus connecting your controller. So basically they're saying you're using the DJI controller. If you're using a different controller, you're going to select a different port, or actually no, you won't. You scratch that. You're not even going to select a different port just because that's your designated port for your RX is your receiver port basically. So wherever you connect your RX to, that's what you're going to use that UART port. UART port 4 is our telemetry or MSP. So they've already selected that for us. That's perfect. Configuration. I've already came in here and done a little bit of my configurations, but I run props out. I did a ton of research on it. Props out are kind of the route I want to go, and there's tons of videos online. I'm not going to get into running props and props out as of yet. Maybe I'll make that another video down the road, but I run props out. You want to make sure it's at D-Shot 600. All this looks good. All this looks good. It's by default no barometer, no magnetometer, accelerator on. Switch these both to 8 kilohertz just because. Also switch this to 180. It's defaulted to 25 degrees, so if you're on a hill or anything like that, you can still arm the quad. All the rest of this is looking good. Serial based receiver, S-Bus, that's our controller. GPS, no. Air mode is already turned on. Telemetry, this all looks good. This is our beep, so you don't need to buy a separate beacon test. Basically, it'll utilize the motors for beep in case of a lost on quad, but your battery will have to be plugged in order for any of the beeps to work, basically. So if it's an ejected battery, it's not going to work. But go ahead and turn these on. Go ahead and continue on with these PID adjustments. And yeah. I'm gonna start off basic. I had 2 different sets of options on PIDs. I'm gonna go with this one first, and then I'm going to obviously learn more about PID tuning, stuff like that. But I believe this should fly pretty good right out of the get-go. I don't think my friends will steer me wrong on my PID setups and everything. But these are the settings I'm gonna go with here. Again, you want I-term rotation off, VBAT on. You can leave all of this done, and just to make sure that it is saved. We're saving it. Perfect, it is. Alright, so this is where you want to make sure that your controller and everything's talking to it. So you just make a quick test. We have throttle, we have yaw, we have pitch, and we have roll. Perfect. Oh, hold on, my thing's beeping at me. Battery was beeping at me because it took forever. Alright, so everything's pretty much talking to each other correctly, and that's good. You want to change your threshold 1005 to 1995, and as for modes, these are just all your switches, so this is pretty much customizable to what you would like. What I've done is I've put my arm switch on the middle position, on my left switch on the top. I'm using the DJI FPV controller. I've put my angle on the top position on my right trigger up here. I've put my beeper in the middle position of this little guy right here. And I've turned my turtle mode into the middle position on this one right here. I don't need anything there, don't need anything in there. Motors right here, this is where you're going to test to make sure it's the correct motor spinning, and all you do is you click this little I understand, and this is, you can singly spin the motors, make sure they are the correct motors in orientation, which I've already gone in and I have made sure they are. I had to change some code a little bit to adjust because I flipped the ESC. Basically all I did was I took my motor direction. So this is if the battery terminal was facing in the back. So I just spun this 180 degrees, which therefore put my one motor, my 3, 4, and 2. So obviously I had to switch them. And what you do is you actually go into your CLI down here and adjust it according to the code. I will link a video in the description. It's Rotor Riot's HD1 build, and they go in detail a little bit on how to adjust the motors corrective on there. Just to save time on this video, basically. And I'm a beginner, and you probably want to learn a little bit more on stuff like that from somebody that's done it a little bit longer. But that's the one I used. It turned out just fine on mine. Again, I have my motors reversed. That's a whole nother video. You don't have to do that right now. Set it up the way it is, and you should be good. But other than that, we are all solid on here, so we can disconnect. And that's basically all you're going to need to just set it off the get-go. You don't need to adjust your PIDs like I did. I just had a few friends that kind of gave me some information before I even do my first maiden flight, which we're going to get into in a little bit. And always, don't have your props on when you're doing all this stuff, because if you spin the motor and it launches out of there, those things will cut you up pretty good. So we're all done basically on software side of things. So I'm gonna throw some props on this guy and get this thing ready for the maiden voyage. So let's get it. Okay, for this one, what you're gonna want to do is you're just gonna want to ground test it, the maiden flight. So just keep it on the ground, make sure everything's all strapped in, and we're just gonna arm the drone. And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna make sure that our controller is actually reading the same thing. So we're going to go with a little bit of pitch. Make sure it's pitching the right way. Pitching. And everything's looking pretty good there. So we're just going to disarm it. And next we're going to take it for a little bit of a hover and just make sure it's hovering and everything's good before we go out and just start ripping it. as you can see, I didn't disappoint. Crashes were pretty much expected. First flight with this thing. What are you gonna do? But man, I'll tell you what, it is insane fun. This thing's pretty damn durable, and yeah, there's gonna be a lot more videos. So as we progress and do all that, hopefully the footage will be a little bit better for you guys. But hope you enjoyed the build process. Hopefully it may have helped some people. Maybe coming from a beginner's perspective, it's a little bit, I don't know, helpful. But either way, whatever. The video was pretty cool. I am happy I put it out there for you guys, and hope you enjoy it. I'm doing these videos every week, so just stay tuned for the next one. We will be having a giveaway on the next video, so stay tuned. It's definitely something you're not going to want to miss. So thanks for watching, and see you next week.